Hello and welcome to the demo video for the dynamic bundle estimator. This is a spreadsheet that I did as a custom version for someone and it all fell through and turned rather nasty. So I've moved it into a standard version, but I've kind of somewhat simplified it. They wanted something incredibly complex and I looked at AI afterwards and kind of ran through what it was doing and it said it was very unorthodox. So we've simplified it into a simpler version. So hopefully this will make sense to you. It was one that was initially done for like the whole printing industry and stuff. But I mean, it can be used in any kind of field, provided you kind of bundling things together. So if, for example, you want to give someone a quote and say, if you take, 500 of these units, it's going to cost you so much. If you take 800 of units, it's going to cost you so much. And if you take 1,000 of the units, it's going to cost you so much. This could be, as I said, in the printing or really in a number of industries, provided each of those different product, whatever it is that you're selling, if you're selling so many of these products, it actually itemizes all the items in the bundle. So the terminology could switch around depending on how you're using it. If you're saying, for example, if you're selling 10 different items and you're packaging these 10 items into a bundle and you say, okay, well, do you want 8 bundles, 12 bundles, 15 bundles? Then obviously that's one way around where you may have the higher quantity of the units going into the bundle, but then you might be selling one or three or five of these bundles or packages. Whereas alternatively, you may have it the other way around, where you may have, for example, say one color print, one laminate, one piece of paper, whatever, all going into a brochure. So you may have one of these, two of those, three of those going into a brochure, and then you may be selling brochures by the 5,000, 10,000, 15,000, however it works. So I'll show you how the spreadsheet sets up. I've tried to keep it as generic as possible so you can use it either way. First and foremost is there's nothing on this first tab. You can go across to the logo tab and you can insert your logo how I've done here. If you click on this cell within the black box and go to insert and say picture and say place in cell, then this device, select the picture you want and it will pop it inside the cell. And whatever's showing inside that cell will then show on the quote over here. So it is 2 parts high, 3 parts wide. So you can crop the logo best as you need to so that it fits nicely into that block. That's step one. Once you've got your logo in there, then just do up the settings. So the categories, depending on what your categories are, each of the different items on your price list, I'll show you how that works. You can actually you can put into a category. It doesn't do much more than that. So you can input some categories and put these things into the different categories. And then you can have the members of staff if you've got different members of staff doing the quotations. The starting month and year, you can set this 12-month period by setting the starting month and the starting year for the 12-month period. All that is on your dashboard. You've got some graphs that are set up for a 12-month period. If you leave those two blank, it has a rolling 12 months. And then the last quote number, it gives you the next quote number in sequence every time. So if you want to start the spreadsheet, say on quote number 600, then put 599 in there and it will start the next one at 600. And the number of days for a follow-up. The spreadsheet will remind you to follow up on quotes, so you can put in how many days between follow-ups. These down here, I'll show you what those do when we get to it in a few minutes. So once you've done the setup, you now need to set up a price list. So you can put all your items in here, put unique names for products and services. So these could be, depending on what you want to do, absolutely anything really, but every single itemized list that's going to go into a quote. So when it does a quote, it's going to list all the itemized things, items that go into each quote. And it's going to say, if you take, 500 of these, 800 of these, 1,000 of these, you can have various options that you can select. So these are all items, products, or services. Which category is it in? Just make sure the product service name is unique each time. Which category is it in? Select the category and then put in a setup price. Whatever the setup price is, it doesn't matter how many of these you do, it's going to charge you one of those prices. And then you can put the per unit base rate in. So you can put the price per unit and the minimum quantity. If there is a minimum quantity, put the minimum quantity in. And then what it'll do later on is the spreadsheet will then check and see if the minimum quantity, if there is a minimum quantity entered, if it's been met, and it'll flag up if not. And then what the units is. So you may put this, the unit as a sheet or a box or a meter or a square meter or whatever the case might be for the unit. Then you've got a discontinued column. This one here is really just if you've got a item on here that's now been discontinued, you can just come and select the X in that row. The reason for that, rather than clearing it, is because you're really going to have selected that product or service for a whole bunch of quotes potentially. So you don't want to just not appearing in the quote and then flagging up all sorts of errors. So by marking it as discontinued, what you do is you tell the spreadsheet, I don't have that. So when you actually call up that quote later on, it'll say this item has been discontinued so that you know that you then need to replace it or change the quote in some way. Otherwise, leave that blank. And then you've got 10 discount rates. So you can say, for example, if you buy 1,000, then you pay that much. If you buy 2,500, you pay that much per unit. If you pay by 5,000, you pay that much per unit. Because then what will happen is the spreadsheet will actually check how many you're ordering later on. It'll multiply them out and it'll go, okay, you've ordered this many, therefore they get that rate, and it'll switch and change them for you at a later stage. So you can put in up to 10 different discount rates, as well as the product information. Once you've got that, each new client, I think client is probably a slightly misleading term for this page. What it should really be is a prospect list. So whenever you have someone you want to send a quote to, you put the name in, the contact, email address, delivery address and phone number, etc., and put that information in. And then you're able to select that person when you're actually doing a quote. The reason for this is just so that when you actually call up the PDF, it's got their name, it's got their address, it's got the email, it's got everything together, which I'll show you in a few minutes. So this one you wouldn't necessarily pre-populate. The price list you probably would pre-populate. This one you wouldn't pre-populate. You just add on a contact each time you want to do a quote. Unless, of course, you've already done a quote for them, in which case you've got their details. Once you add on there, it's now just really a case of doing the quote. So what you do is you come to the quote list, you select the next quote number in sequence. Once you select the next quote number in sequence, you would then select the date, which is today's date. You can override that with another date if you want the quote date. Select the staff, select the company. Those all come from the lists. If there's a client reference, you can put that in. Otherwise, you just have to say how many quantities, how many is the default quantity, and what's the postage fee. I'm just going to take this out because I want to add a new one. We've got two in here already. So if you say, for example, there's a £45 postage fee, that's just going to be a flat rate of that for that postage fee. But then what the quote's going to do is it's going to say, okay, what's the cost if we have 1,000? What's the cost if we have 2,500? And what's the cost if we have 5,000? And then this one here, you can just type in some project details. You can drop down a row here if you are in the cell. If you press Alt and Enter, it drops down a row within the cell. If you just press Enter, it jumps to the next cell. So you want to press Alt and Enter, you can type on different rows in there if you want to. That's just a little section on the quote, which is going to pop up with some information about the project. That's all you select up when you're setting up the project. You just select up to that point, the outcome, accepted date, date follow-up, etc. That's the next stage of the project. Other notes is immaterial. You can type stuff in there if you want, but you don't need to. So these ones here, the outcome accepted, that one you kind of use as a project management tool once you've done the quote. But in order to get the quote, you just fill up to that point, and then you've told the spreadsheet what you want to quote on. So then, but now the spreadsheet doesn't actually know what's included in that quote. It knows you need 5,000, but it's going 5,000 of what? So then what you do is you go to the product selection and you select the product selection. As you can see, I've selected product select quote number 1 4 times because there are 4 of those products or services that are going within quote number 1. So I said quote number 1 4 times. We need that. How many per unit? We need one of those per unit, one of those per unit, one of those per unit. But actually, this outer shipping box 0.02 per unit. And then we've got what's the setup fee. So when you actually get to that point and you've selected what quote number, what the quote number is, the product or service, and the quantity unit. The rest of this you just select. Don't type anything and just select it, and it'll tell you what that unit price is. It'll tell you what the unit price is. It'll tell you what the discount code is. It will tell you what the setup price is, tell you what the units are. You simply just click on what it is on the drop-down list and select it. Why do I do this? The reason I do this is so that you can actually lock those items into place. If it's based on the price list, then as soon as you update the price list, all your previous quotes are going to update accordingly, and you may or may not want that. So this way you can actually go and select it, which means it locks the current price in for that quote. So even if the prices update, the quote stays the same. If the prices do change, it will tell you on this quote. So let's just say, for example, this silk paper all of a sudden went up and we did have a setup price. If we went to the price list and we put the silk paper and we said, now there's a £10 setup fee. If we go back to the product selection, it actually shows us that icon in there. So it says that this first column is the price setup. The second column refers to the unit and the third column refers to discount codes. So it says this price has been updated. So if I want to update the quote and have the current prices, I can just go and select that and update it. If I don't, then I leave it as it was, and then I quote them on the old price effectively. So that's why I've made those ones as selections. So where were your product sections there? So if you select those, enter the first ones, and then just select those three columns, it then has a look at what's going on. And what it does then is it says, all right, you said you need one per unit. How many units do you need? 5,000, or alternative of 7, 5, or 10,000. And then it does all the maths behind the scenes. And last but not least, what it does is when you come to the quote and you select here, you've got a list of the quotes you've done and you select quote number one, it populates everything, the quotation details, then it gives you the quantity, the price, what the delivery cost is, total price, what it's going to cost, the quantity, if you did it at this price, what's the excluding price, including delivery? If you did it at that price, what's the excluding that price, including delivery? And it gives you the price of these two prices as alternative prices, but this is your main prices, which is what you asked for. So what you may end up doing is giving them what they asked for, but then giving them one option, maybe slightly less, slightly fewer items if you want to go, if you're going keen on price, or maybe one option more, or two options more, or whatever it is you want to do. But this bit in the green box is actually the default, what was kind of agreed or decided on, not necessarily decided on, but quoted for. And the blue options are alternative. And then you've got down here your quote details, which actually lists the different items that are within that thing and the line price and the unit price and then how many sheets you've got and all the rest of it. So this one gives you the quantities. You can double check that. This section down here with the gray, this doesn't come out in the PDF. So this is here for your information. If there's any setup or unit costs or whatever that have been changed, you'll see some alerts flagging up there, and you'll see some crosses here if there's anything that's missing from this list. But this is for your benefit. If I were to come here and say save a copy, and I'm just going to browse and then I'm going to go to the desktop. It takes a few seconds to do this. If I say save a copy, I'm going to save it as a PDF. And I say desktop and I say save it as a PDF. Save. We'll see what happens now. It doesn't save this bit in the gray. It just saves the bit in the white as a one-page PDF. So if you're saying, well, hold on, what happens if there's more items and it takes more than 30 items, which is the space here? Then it says this is page 1 of 2, and you can save page 1 as a PDF, and then you can come here and you can put in page 2, and it'll give you page 2, and you can save that as a PDF, and then use a PDF program to combine the two together. So that will let you create kind of longer quotes in a sense. I didn't want to have a whole 10-page quote if you're never actually going to use more than one page because it just looks a bit funny. So that's your quote, saving as a PDF. You've got your prices, which says relatively static. As I mentioned, if you come to your price list and click discontinued or change prices, then when you go to your product selection, you will see here what's been updated. And when you go to your quote, you'll see down here what's actually changed. So when you pull up an old quote, you can see exactly what's changed, and you can decide whether you want to honor the old quote or whether you want to update it, in which case you can just come back to the product selection, select the new setup price, the new unit price, or the new discount code price, depending on what's changed, and it'll update that quote accordingly. Then if you come back here again, you can then obviously continue down here and you can say outcome. So this quote, if the outcome's accepted, you can select accepted. It says which quantity was accepted. Was it the default, alternative 1, alternative 2? You say, well, it was a default that was accepted, and that gives you today's date. And let's just say this one was declined. If it was declined, you don't have to put in which one it was. It says what date, that date. And then the spreadsheet will then track those in the dashboard. If they're still outstanding and you get to your 14 days, then your next follow-up is going to be asking flag up in yellow. Then you just click that button. That gives you 2 weeks time from today. So it's a 2 week kind of lead time. You just click that, which then refreshes it again when you follow up, and it gives you another 14 days to follow up again. When you get to that date, click that again, and it'll go off into the future. So that one will keep kind of updating, as it were, and flagging up for alerts for follow-ups. But once you then get the outcome, you can say decline, for example, um, on today's day. And then if you go to the dashboard, you can see the dashboard breaks down how many quotes you've got by each status, what's the value, which month they were by month of breakdown of quotes by status by month of quote, and you've got breakdown by value. So this is the number of quotes, the value of the quotes, and you've got some key figures, which ones took the default, which ones took an alternative, and then what the outcomes were. So you've got this dashboard showing you what's going on with your different quotes. So now what happens when you actually fill the page? Because I've got room for 500 quotes, and I've got room for product selection. I think there was 10,000 product selections, because you're going to have numerous ones per quote, and what have you. What happens when you actually fill this up? So if you do fill this up and you want to clear some stuff off, what you can do is, if you go to the settings and you say accepted quotes I want to keep for 6 months, others I want to keep for 6 months, declined I want to keep for 6 months, but active I want to keep for 12 months. You may put this as 3 months, whatever the case might be. If you set that up to tell it what you want, how long you want to keep the different status quotes, what will happen then is, on your quote list, if you scroll across the right, you'll see there's a remove column. This remove will actually get some text in when they're ready to be removed. So when you want to clear this out, if you copy this column, you don't have to copy the whole column, but you can start at the top. You can go right down to the bottom if you want, or you can just go down as far as you've got text, copy and paste values into the sorter column. So when you copy the text here, come to the sorter column, right click, paste values. Not any of these other ones. It must be the paste 1, 2, 3 values. Then you paste the values into here, then sort from Z to A and get all the text at the top. Once you've got all the text at the top, you can then clear out under the red headers and the gray sorter column. You can clear out everything that's then got text in here, which means essentially you're clearing out everything that's going to be removed. And then once you've finished, you can then sort the data that's left, aka the ones you want to keep, by date, oldest to newest, bring them all up to the top. And once you've done that with the quotes, what will happen then is, when you go to the product selection, you'll see that you'll have a bunch of removes in here. So these will be all the ones that have now missing quote numbers. So you can then do the same, copy that, paste values into the sorter, sort them, clear out all those that need to be removed, and then resort them by quote number again back in. So now you've got all the ones that are still valid. And then what you can do as well is, you can go to the clients, and because you've got the number of quotes done, you can copy that, paste value into the sorter, sort lowest to highest, and clear out all those with a 0, which have now got no more quotes. So this isn't I wouldn't say this is a regular routine, but this is something that you would do periodically, just to clear out the spreadsheet, to get rid of all the old stuff that you've now just got the valid new stuff. What I would suggest doing is doing a save as just before you do this. Do a save as, save it in archive somewhere, and then take your current version and clear out all the old stuff, which means you've now just got the new quotes moving forward. So you've still got an archive version of the old one, but now your actual active spreadsheet is now nice and lean, and you can carry on carrying on. If you do forget how to do that copy and paste and clear thing, there is a video on my website. If you go and look on the website under resource and stuff, there's best practices, I think, on the home page. There is a page that actually shows you how to do the remove copy and paste to remove stuff that's in those columns if you do forget. Otherwise, just watch this demo video again and refresh your memory, because that's unfortunately something you don't do that often. So you do tend to forget how to do that. But I hope that makes sense. Logo input settings, get that sorted out first, get your price list done, and then add the clients as you need them. This basically generates a quote to an X quote number, and then select all the different product items for that particular quote, all the line items, Then go to the quote, have a look at what you've got down here, make sure that everything's ticked and it all looks correct. Have a look through the quote the first few times, familiarize yourself with the quote. Don't just accept what the spreadsheet says. Please have a look and make sure it's all correct, at least the first few times while you're using it and getting to understand what goes where and how it's supposed to work. And then once you've done that and you're happy with that, you can save it as a PDF and then send it off. And then all you need to do then is just come and update those columns when you actually get some outcome, or if you need to follow up. I hope that makes sense. And if this is something that you're using and it's something that's going to work for you, I wish you all the best. As normal with these kind of spreadsheets, if you're looking at this going, he's almost got it, but it's not quite right for my business. I need something slightly customized or whatever the case might be. Do get in touch. Let's talk about a bespoke version. And we can kind of use this as a starting point of understanding. Thank you very much and goodbye.